This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Stick around to find out how you can get 83% off and 3 extra months for free. Hey, Marcus House with you here. Once again, it is time to check in on Starship progress at both the construction and launch site with a successful static fire and upcoming test flight of Starship serial number 11. The European Space Agency recently revealed their initiative to investigate future space transport solutions, but are they aiming too low? Another beautiful launch as well from Rocket Lab with some interesting discussions during the live stream there with Peter Beck. Starlink launches are as regular now as a high fiber diet, and another set of 60 satellites are now heading into position. A quick update on the pending first ever powered flight on Mars with Ingenuity gearing up for the big show. And this past week we saw a notable Soyuz commercial mission. We take a look at this launch and what was unique about this one in particular.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
As always, we kick off with the continuation of the incredible story that is Starship and Super Heavy development at Boca Chica in Texas. For those of you unfamiliar, this vehicle will change the course of humanity if it all works as predicted. A fully reusable vehicle that can send many tons of cargo and in the future humans into orbit and beyond at such a low price that the entire industry will be turned upside down. This is a complete industry disruptor and it's incredibly exciting to watch it unfold. Early in the week, the 2 white flight termination system boxes were installed onto the prototype Starship number 11. Mary, aka Boca Chica Gal with NASA Spaceflight here, picking up that beautiful footage. Thanks very much, Mary. This vehicle is going to take its test flight, we hope, within days now. Of course, we did say almost this exact same thing in last week's episode, but there have been a number of interesting delays we'll talk about shortly. Installing the flight termination system was a good sign that the flight was soon to come after that successful static fire. On Monday at around 9 AM local time, SpaceX successfully fired up Starship SN11's 3 Raptor engines, completing a smooth and clean static fire a full week after the first not so successful attempt. This pause was most likely caused by local authorities wishing to avoid too many road closures during spring break, and there are a limit to how many road closures that SpaceX are allowed to do. SN11's aim, of course, is to mirror her 3 sisters' flights with the main goal of nailing the landing at a slow enough velocity that would avoid a rapid, unscheduled disassembly as seen with SN10. Throughout the week, we saw a number of road closures appear and then be cancelled. We were expecting a flight quite soon after that static fire. However, after further review of data, it was found that one of the 3 Raptor engines on SN11 had to be removed for repairs. That problematic Raptor was then removed and was spotted being transported from the site. Just 24 hours later, Raptor Engine 46 was delivered to the launch complex and was installed super quickly in the early hours of the morning on Thursday, the 25th of March. On Friday, that next day, we had a surprise announcement that SpaceX were going to not only complete a static fire, but also that if that went to plan, a flight attempt would occur. SpaceX even put the notification up on the website, so it was all go, and we were live streaming away for that next milestone. Sadly though, a combination of issues with weather and the flight termination system setup interrupted that plan, and the roads were then reopened before the pad was even cleared. Elon Musk is now saying on Twitter that the next attempt may now be Monday. Additional checkouts are needed. During the week, we had NASA astronaut Astro Christina sharing a photo of her and 3 fellow astronauts on her Instagram page, standing in front of Starship SN11 there, saying that these are common goals and a shared vision, something I think that we can all agree on. Here we have NASA astronauts learning about SpaceX's Starship, one critical element in a growing worldwide field of deeper space exploration systems with sites on the Moon and Mars. To news at the build site, we believe that this is SN15's nose cone sporting those aero covers, and one of these forward fins was rolled out of Tent 3 and moved next to the low bay. Speaking of noses, this other unknown tipless nose cone that has been seen around the site for the last few months has now been stacked on top of 2 stacks of 4 rings each. We are still thinking that this could possibly be a new lunar Starship mock-up, but we haven't seen anything overly official on that at this stage. What do you think? Let us know your thoughts. We also see the first orbital launch pad ground service equipment tank, or GSE tank, is nearly complete, with the forward dome also being stacked on the 2 stacks of 4 rings. It is believed that multiple of these GSE tanks will be built to be used to hold propellant commodities at the orbital tank farm. Now, I think that after the flight of Starship SN11, it's fair to say that we will see a pause in these quite rapid flight tests. The next test after that we expect to see is BN1 and BN2 going through their own testing campaign, which was explored deeper in last week's video. That was a big news, seeing that it's the very first Super Heavy booster stacked. If you missed that one, a link is in the description, and thanks heaps everyone for the incredible enthusiasm for that update. All of you out there subscribing, liking and sharing these videos makes such a huge difference to us. So close now to that milestone, and that is all because of you right there. Thank you very much. So yes, after BN1 and BN2 testing, we expect to see SN15 taking the stand, and that is sporting the new upgrades such as the thrust puck and the plumbing that will push the vehicle to all new heights. That vehicle is currently here in the mid bay and will likely remain there until the high bay is vacated to allow for nose cone mating. Over here in the high bay, there is still a huge focus on stacking booster number 1. Over this week, the 2 halves were welded together and the crane is now detached, leaving BN1 standing on its own. It is expected that this massive tower of steel will soon be rolled to the pad ahead of cryo tests and possibly static fires. Again, remember that this one will not fly at all. This is a Pathfinder vessel only at this stage. Now, the new bridge crane that had finally arrived at Boca Chica last week has now been installed into the roof of the high bay. This system will allow for all heavy lifting tasks to be completed via the heavy duty device that will translate along the high bay roof. That should mean that there are no more reasons for reach arounds, as Elon replied here when I commented on SpaceX creating a hole in the high bay roof to lower the crane jib through. Hopefully this story is a thing of the past. So yes, after these next few prototypes, we have Super Heavy BN3 and then Starship SN20. Their highly ambitious target of launching into orbit by July has now been confirmed by Elon Musk, saying that is our goal after responding to a question posted by NASA Spaceflight. SpaceX are also aiming for that incredible goal of setting up a Mars base in the 2020s called Mars Base Alpha. Before this happens though, of course, the first orbital launch pad will need to be completed. Over the past few weeks, we've seen SpaceX proceeding full steam ahead with this vertical formwork now going up on the integration tower. These are the shots that we just love exploring, and that wouldn't be possible without the beautiful work done here by Mauricio with RGV aerial photography. All of that support that you provide on their Patreon makes all of this possible. Now, this huge tower will soon be used to stack a Starship atop a Super Heavy booster ahead of a launch into orbit. How exciting is that? Last week we talked a little about the test mount for Starship's vacuum Raptors, which looked like it would allow the 3 vacuum Raptor engines to potentially attach to this very prototype. This one here is more than likely just a Pathfinder, of course, but Elon tweeted this week about the development of the Raptor vacuum, saying that the progress is going well and that there is a lot of work to be done for an extra 20 seconds of specific impulse. Now, these Raptors are created to be more efficient in vacuum conditions than the sea-level engines due to the much larger bell that we see here. This shot here by SpaceX shows just how much bigger that engine bell is. Quite a significant difference. These versions of the engines will be utilised to place Starship into orbit and for other burns to go to the Moon or Mars. So yes, watching Starship evolve into what may well soon be a complete game changer for the industry sure does emphasise the requirement for other agencies to follow in SpaceX's footsteps. The European Space Agency recently talked about their initiative to work towards future space transportation solutions, with funding going to several agencies to research launch systems that could be utilised after the year 2030. Now that is close to a decade away, right? The problem that the industry sees here is that the newer European rockets still in development, that being the Vega C and Ariane 6, will be launched in a market where existing reusability makes them appear almost completely obsolete before they even get off the ground. To be researching a solution for a system after 2030, the entire industry should have totally changed by then. Elon Musk here tweeted that they are aiming too low. Without full and quick reusable rockets, these vehicles will have no market to even deal with. As he says here, anything that is not already reusable will seem like a cloth biplane airplane in the age of jets. If we look at SpaceX's plan for Starship alone, SpaceX could well be having them landing on Mars years before 2030, and it is certainly time for other space agencies to really take a hard look at the industry and realise that things are evolving very rapidly. SpaceX are alone a very disruptive force with their innovation. They are already miles ahead with Falcon 9, and if SpaceX were not the driving force that they are, they could just assume that while they are leading, all is well. They could just right now decide to slowly improve Falcon 9 further and literally lead the market for the next 5 years. But right now, they are madly engineering a new ship that will put the Falcon 9 to shame. The other space agencies out there need to be aiming for a moving target. Don't aim for where SpaceX are now, aim for where SpaceX are going to be by 2030. If they wait that long, they will be well out of range. As also stated here by Elon Musk, SpaceX is developing rockets needed to make life multiplanetary, but even if they fail at that specific goal and instead just make a rocket that lowers the cost to get mass to orbit by orders of magnitude cheaper, it will still be the most advanced rocket on Earth. In the end, I think it's going to be interesting to see if government-funded agencies will soon become a thing of the past. Now, I personally think that it's a real shame if that does end up being true. I'd love to see all of the big players out there working on reusability. The collective skills and engineering experience out there is just amazing. Start putting it to good use, not just continuing to develop new vehicles that focus on ditching yet more rocket bodies into the ocean after their first and final use. Now, Rocket Lab had another phenomenal launch this week with their mission They Go Up So Fast with Electron. We'll talk more about that more in a moment, but before that, a huge thank you to my sponsor Surfshark VPN, who have been huge supporters of my channel now for well over a year. Every video that you see here and a lot more have been supported by Surfshark, which has allowed us to create more and better content. Now, what is a VPN? It is a secure virtual private network that allows you the potential to truly open up the internet. If you have run out of content to stream from libraries within your country, this is a game changer for you. With Surfshark VPN, you can easily open up a load of new content to explore from around the world previously restricted from you. You just change the country you're accessing the internet from and bam, you now appear to be browsing from that location and have access to brand new content to consume. Maybe you also find yourself restricted from social platforms and external news services. That is no longer a problem when you can use a VPN. I'm a big believer in an internet that is open to all and is log-free. By using Surfshark VPN, you can take control of your online security and visibility while protecting yourself from data mining services, internet service providers, or perhaps even from those around you who may have very different views and beliefs than you do. If you would like to support my channel here and are also considering a new VPN or changing your existing VPN, go to surfshark.deals/Marcus and you will get 83% off and 3 extra months for free. The link is in the description below. So yes, yet another beautiful launch on the Electron rocket this week with an incredible mission taking 6 separate satellites into 2 different orbits, then also activating the Photon stage itself as a satellite, so technically 7 payloads in total. This was a special mission as well, with Rocket Lab passing their 100th satellite being deployed in total. Nice work, Rocket Lab. The launch here of Electron thundered to life, reaching the typical main engine cutoff just under 2.5 minutes, and there was that beautiful stage separation. The second stage fired up to place the vehicle into its initial parking orbit at 317 kilometers in altitude. This was to ensure that the payload and vehicle were prepared for multiple engine burns of the Photon kick stage. While in the coast phase, there was a great interview here with Peter Beck talking more on Neutron, which is the next much larger rocket that they are developing. As he said here, they have already come up with a name for Neutron's first stage engines, but they haven't revealed that just yet. I always love the naming of Rocket Lab's rocket components. They currently, of course, have the Rutherford engines for Electron's first stage, named after the New Zealander-born scientist Ernest Rutherford. Then they also have the Curie engine, named after Polish scientist Marie Curie. So what will the name of the next engine be? Place your bets in the comments. Payload deployment began at T+52 minutes, and the first 5 satellites were deployed in quick succession. The final 2 burns occurred soon after, and the final satellite was deployed, completing all main mission objectives for Rocket Lab. It's also good to to remember that Electron had another payload as well, the Photon stage itself. This Photon stage was activated and turned into a Photon satellite, therefore making it the second Photon to be turned into a satellite after its main mission was completed. This final test of a Photon satellite was needed for NASA to prove the technology. A Photon is currently going to be the last piece to NASA's Capstone mission, which is planned to venture out into a lunar orbit later this year. Capstone will ride the Photon into a trans-lunar injection and map out the orbital plane of the future Lunar Orbiting Platform Gateway. That is a mission I sure am excited for, as we'll see this tiny little Electron rocket send a payload for NASA right to the moon. Now, what's another week without a SpaceX Starlink launch? Well, here we go again with the launch at Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This was the place to see all of the action if you felt like visiting the site at 4:28 AM on Wednesday, March 24th. With tanks pressed for flight, it was a matter of igniting those reliable Merlin engines once again for flight number 6 for this booster. This one, of course, was carrying yet another set of 60 Starlink satellites. The Falcon 9 hurtled its way uphill, screaming out over the Atlantic Ocean. Waiting on station for recovery operations was the autonomous drone ship Of Course I Still Love You, and the fairing halves were set for a wet recovery, meaning that they are scooped out of the Atlantic Ocean. The second stage came to life, pushing the payload onwards to the required orbital altitude, first requiring 2 coast phases. With the fairing separated and heading for their recovery sites, the first stage continued its trip back to the drone ship. A matter of minutes later, we had yet another successful recovery of a Falcon 9 first stage. Just over an hour after launch, we see the tension rods there release, and another shiny new batch of internet satellites were on their way. This event brings to a close yet another successful Starlink mission for SpaceX and their ever-growing constellation of internet satellites. Now, a quick update on the Mars Perseverance rover as well, which has been driving itself to a clear space. That area, when found, is going to be designated as an airfield to allow the first ever Mars helicopter flight to take place. This area doesn't need to be massive, but they are targeting a clear, flat 10 by 10 meter area. Once found over the course of 10 days or so, Perseverance is going to perform a series of deployments to unfold Ingenuity and drop it down on the surface. Currently, the rough timeline for the first flight sits at around April the 8th. However, before that first flight, there are a few other milestones to proceed through. Firstly, of course, the safe deployment of the helicopter to the Martian surface from the belly pan of the rover. It then also needs to keep warm autonomously through the extremely cold nights, which can be as low as -90 degrees Celsius or -130 degrees Fahrenheit. It needs to also prove that all of its solar charging systems work as intended, so that it can then communicate successfully with the rover. Then the first, more exciting test, which is an initial spin-up of its rotor blades for the very first time. That won't fly at that point, but it will ensure that Ingenuity is working as intended. Then we have the big one, the very first actual flight to roughly 3 meters off the surface, where it will hover for around 30 seconds or so, flying autonomously, followed by what we hope to be a successful descent and a landing. I'm just so excited to see the result of this test. How incredible is this going to be? Now, sporting a new get-up of the blue and white, we saw the successful launch of the Soyuz 2.1A rocket on Monday, March the 22nd from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The new colour scheme was a tribute to the Vostok rocket, which among its many achievements carried the first human into space on April the 12th, 1961. This, of course, was Yuri Gagarin. The typical orange areas were painted blue, which is the corporate colour for GK Launch Services, which is a sub-company of Roscosmos. It seems like we will always know when GK Launch Services are running the launch, as future commercial missions will bear the same colour scheme instead of the usual grey, dark green and orange colours. This launch also marked the first fully commercial mission entirely operated by this company. On board the launch vehicle were 38 satellites from 18 countries. This is a unique record for the number of countries participating in one launch, with the payloads for this mission sitting on top of the upper stage. This is essentially an autonomous space tug, allowing for more complex orbital insertions and also as an escape stage for interplanetary trajectories. The upper stage has its own independent guidance system and fuel to accomplish these varied orbital altitudes in a single launch. The primary payload was the 500 kilogram or just over 1,000 pound CAS 500-1 remote sensing satellite from South Korea with incredible capability of image resolution down to a half meter. Also making up the multinational payload were a mix of cube, micro and nano satellites, and also of note was a pair of CubeSats, the 1U Timon and 2U Pumbaa, named of course after characters from The Lion King. These satellites will attempt to fly in formation, with Pumbaa deploying a shade to enable Timon to image the solar corona. So yes, some amazing milestones there in this commercial mission. Be sure to keep an eye out for our midweek special episode where we continue to talk more in depth about the commercial space program. That should be coming on Tuesday. Now remember that we are huge supporters of the transition to electric vehicles here on the channel, and our partner EV offers the ability to hire an electric vehicle in Australia. Perhaps you have wanted to take an extended test drive. You could be touring the country and want to drive around in a Tesla. If that sounds appealing to you, you can use the link in the description for a discount. Huge thanks to the amazing patrons and YouTube members right there. Your support here allows us to keep making content at this quality and frequency. That help is incredibly important for the team, and it means that we can continue to increase the time that we can spend, and that is all thanks to that growing list of supporters. Thank you to each and every one of you. If you like what we're doing, you can help by becoming a YouTube member from the join button below, or a patron at patreon.com/MarcusHouse. Either of those options gives you access to interact with me more directly via the linked roles on our Discord server. You can also have your name listed right here like all these other amazing people. You can also have earlier and ad-free access to these videos to watch before anyone else. Thank you of course to the production crew assisting hugely with these videos, and of course to the quality control squad here helping me research and proof all of the material that you see right here. If you are interested in these topics and you'd like to be a part of this, follow me on Twitter and please do get in touch. In the tile in the bottom left today we have my video last week talking about Starship booster number 1. In the top right is my latest video, and in the bottom right, content that YouTube has selected from my channel just for you. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.